Bizarre Brain Comics. Hello, my comic book friends, and welcome to Bizarre Brain Comics. I am Gary, your host. And as you can see, well, here we are. This time, we're going to take a look at the new Gold Keys. Boris Karloff Gold Key Mysteries number 2. And I usually say I'd like to take a look at some older comics and talk a little bit about the characters and creators and examine the stories and the art. Well, this time it's brand spanking new. Before we talk about that, okay, I've got my new book available. This is Bizarre Brain Comics Presents Heroes. Available on Amazon. Still have to go to Bizarre Brain Comics Anthology, scroll down to Series, click on Series, and then it comes up. Or you can also get it at the Barnes & Noble online, and I've seen it available on Thrift Books. Remember, this is my new book, and it is more mainstream than my first book. Has some superhero stuff. Has a little bit of horror. It's got a Western story, and some neat little pictures in the background. So give that a look, if you please. And I want to thank everyone who has already bought their copy. Thank you so much. So here we are, Boris Karloff. Now, a few months ago, issue 1 came out from the very first issue of the first title under the new Gold Key banner, and that issue was very disappointing, and I gave a review of it, and the publishers got a hold of me, and I imagine some of the others who give it poor reviews, and asked. We talked on the phone for about 40 minutes, and they told me they were going to send me the second issue to review, and they hoped that I and all the others out there would give it a more favorable review. Now, of course, I have been I loved the old original Gold Key mystery titles. That was Boris Karloff, Twilight Zone. I'm drawing a blank. All those. Ripley's Believe It or Not, stuff like that. And of course, the Boris Karloff. And here's my version of Boris Karloff, based on the photograph that they had, because they were all the old ones had a photograph of Boris up in the cover, up in the corner. And okay, and on that first issue, I told them what I thought. I had some things I didn't like at all, and some things that I did like. One of the things that I wasn't thrilled with was the strong stylization of all the art in there. And one of the stories, I was sorry to say, did not really make any sense. And I am sorry to say that. And that issue was very disappointing. So yesterday, this arrived at my house on my step. And I read it today, so that I could talk with you about it. Okay, let's start. Here it is. Story Never Dies. And with the creators here: Conrad, Williams, Rasmussen, Harding, Everett, Ahrens, and Barrow. And this cover. Oh, now I've forgotten the guy's name. I just looked it up. Johnny Dombrowski did this, and I love this cover. I love this cover. Oh, if that isn't it's creepy. And this time he looked, even though I loved the cover on the last issue too, first issue as well, but I didn't think it looked that much like Boris. And here, I think it does look like Boris. And this is indicating one of the stories in here. So now the lead story was continued from the first issue, and it is a serialization, and it's, well, we'll see. And this is Warehouse, and that's W-H-E-R-E, as in where is the house, Warehouse. And this is part 2, Keeper of Dreams, by Michael W. Conrad and Kelly Williams. And unfortunately, it is very it's supposed to be, in the rain in the warehouse, and it's a burned house. A house has burned down. Okay, in the first part, this was a story of this house, this unusual house appears in different locations every day, and they had some government agents and stuff able to figure out where it was going to appear next, and then when it did, they rushed in, and the house basically ate them. But we'll see a little bit about that. And but it's the rain that makes the image a little difficult. I'm not going to go into depth on the stories here, because but I like the artwork much better. And I think it's the same artist, but it's not quite as heavily stylized as that first part had been before. And this stuff is actually little snippets, parts, because this is Boris Karloff himself is in this story. Is part of the story. He's the central figure in this story, in this part. And this is him through his life, different times in his life, when these two women in the house got eventually burned down. But it is still slightly stylized, but it is much more appealing, and I still just love the coloring, the watercolor. Looks like it was all done hand watercolored. Not is that it looks like that, and it does not look like it was done on a computer. I don't know. Maybe they can do it that well on a computer now, but it looks like it was all done by hand, and I really like that. And so I like the hand coloring, the watercolor coloring, and it is really, really neat. And has the warehouse and different times and different disasters taking place throughout Boris's life. And I do think it looks more like Boris than in the first issue. I'm still disappointed that later, when it shows him in his later life, that he does not have the mustache, because in that last decade of his life, if not, well, actually longer, I think the last 2 to 3 decades of his life, he had a mustache. And it even takes place here. Weird things happening, and it takes place after his death even, and it's continued. It stops right here and then picks up in the end. Then we go to right after, when something happens, and go, what happened? And then we go to the next story, which is called Trenchfoot, and they cram a lot into each page here, and that's fine. And the smell, I don't think I've ever smelled a comic book that smelled like this before. Anyway, some nice artwork, brilliant colors, and I do like the coloring here. It has something about World War I trench warfare and some gas, and I'm not going to causing some mutations. And I'm not going to go into that. Unfortunately, I think they made a mistake here, because at the end it says continued on page 26, which is what it said at the end of this first part of the second of the warehouse story. And I think that was a misprint, because it's not continued. Then we have the town with a million eyes, and so it has some weird and unusual stuff. Again, slightly stylized, but it's appealing, and I think it works. I like this. This is kind of a bizarre story, but it does actually make some sense. And I liked it too. I don't like as well as the others. And then we come back to the second part of this. This is after Boris has died, and this is where I think they should have put the mustache on Boris, because he died in '69, and still it does look more like Boris Karloff. In the house, here he is dead. He's a ghost entering the house. I'm not going to go into that. And there are the two ladies who died in the house fire in the beginning when he was young, and other stuff gone. But I really like the artwork there. I love that coloring technique, and it is a really nice shot. Then we get into the horror aspects, and this is where it ties in with what happened in the first issue. And then, but I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. And then on the inside back cover is an ad. It says, Boris Karloff says, not all hauntings, sudden cough, not all hauntings are thrillers. Some spirits, in fact, can be downright hilarious, like my little friend Figgy here. And goes, thanks, Uncle Boris. Brand new, old school, all ages fun, and it's for Figgy Furthermore, the spirit guide dog. Oh, and I love this illustration, and that is the most Boris-looking Boris in either issue. And I just love that ad. It's so cool, and I want to keep an eye out for Figgy Furthermore. And then just said, because it was released on Valentine's Day, Boris loves you with a heart. February 14th, 2024. It is a little hard to see that because it is so dark. And it is many times much better than the first issue. So I have to thank these guys for doing a nice job. It is not the best, but it is more in keeping. Also, I had commented on the language from the first issue, because they had some very foul cussing, which I don't mind myself, in comics. But in keeping with the Gold Key tradition and Boris Karloff and the Gold Key tradition, I didn't like it. And I noticed here, in this one, when they had time for a little bit of foul language, I can't remember just where it was, and it was faked. The hashtag and the standard bleeping stuff that they use in comics. And I was glad to see that. And I'm glad they took that to heart, because it is much more now. I think it, not just with the language, but the whole thing, I think, is much more in the spirit of the original Gold Key Boris Karloff comics. And I do. It is a vast improvement, and I can say it would be worth you picking it up. And since it is right now brand new on the stands, I can recommend getting it. It's not the best, but it is a far cry from the worst, and it is much better than the first issue. And I did enjoy reading it. It has some interesting stories, and now I'm wanting more. To find out more about that warehouse story. And I like that Boris is strung into the storyline, because he appeared sometimes in the stories before. I still wish he had a mustache right here. I think wish he should have the mustache. But that's all I've got for Boris Karloff Gold Key Mysteries, issue number 2, brand spanking new, Valentine's Day 2024. So, thank you for joining me. Please like, share, and subscribe. You've got friends who are horror fans who are Gold Key fans, who are Boris Karloff fans. Share this with them. They might enjoy it. And do leave comments below. Tell me what you think of Boris. Tell them Boris sent you. He did the mash. He did the monster mash. The monster mash. Yeah. See, in the one of the good things, is they've had to Boris's daughter. Of course, they had to license his name and image for the title from her, and she had to approve every image of Boris. And this time I think it was much better. I was actually surprised when I found that out, because in the first issue, I don't think any of them actually looked like him. Not even on the cover, even though it was an excellent cover. But these here, he looks much more like Boris. I like that. So tell me what you think of Boris Karloff Gold Key Mysteries. Ha ha! And remember, comics are art.